Okay, members of the committee, we do have quorum now. Before the approval of agenda, there are some changes to the agenda. I'll just read them out. It doesn't really affect the agenda in any way. Under 5.3, 2018 World Jazz Festival, there's a delegation from Joe Arsenio. 8.1.1, the Cultural Master Plan Update, there's a presentation. It was listed on the agenda prior to the meeting. And under Government Relations 11.1, there's nothing on that as well. So we got just. Is there any changes from the agenda from anybody else?
Okay, just this question.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Miles.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm just wondering if we could move up the presentation on the Cultural Master Plan to following delegations, because we've got a lot of representatives from the arts community here that would probably like to hear the presentation. So I just ask that we move that in the agenda up to following delegations.
Council okay with that?
Sure.
All in favor? Okay, that's good. It's carried. Also, 5.2, the delegation from Matthew Wilson, Senior Advisor, Association of Municipalities of Ontario, AMO, local share campaign. I'd like to move that delegation up ahead of the delegations 5.1, because we no point him sitting around. Is that everybody okay? All in favor? That's great. It's carried. Councillor Spoda.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for the clerk's guidance on this. I have a constituent who has an application to build a Montessori school, and they received permission through the Committee of Adjustment. The conditions were that they had to have everything in place by February, but there's been a delay with the process here at City Hall, and they're looking for an extension. So I'm just wondering whether we need to give directions to staff to make that happen, or whether they have to go back to the Committee of Adjustment to get an extension.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I understand I've been apprised of this issue this morning. The matters dealing with the Committee of Adjustment are outside the jurisdiction of Committee of Council and Council, because Council has established a Committee of Adjustment and they have jurisdiction as set out in the Planning Act, so it's a separate process. So any conditions that may have been issued with the decision will have to be met, and until release letters are provided, the matter is not settled. If an extension is required, that would be a matter that would have to be taken up with appropriate planning staff and the Committee of Adjustment directly.
Okay, that's fine, and we'll speak to the planning, and that's fine, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Under the Declaration of Interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, does anybody have any conflicts of interest? Seeing none. Under consent, does anybody? I would like to add something to consent, and I believe the clerk has a motion. It's under 6.4.1. It's under the correspondence right now from Ontario. Under OGRA, request support for municipal class environmental assessment process form. So it's up on the screen. Does anybody want me to read the motion, or can you? We're good? We'll move into consent. Okay, all in favor? That's carried, I think. See it again? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, under announcements, there's no announcements. So under delegations, we have 5.2, Matthew Wilson, Senior Advisor of Association of Municipalities of Ontario. Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Matthew Wilson. I'm a Senior Advisor with AMO. I've worked at AMO for the last 11 years, and prior to that I worked for the provincial government, also in municipal affairs. Earlier this year, Lynn Dolan, the AMO president, announced a proposal to raise the HST by 1% to help fund critical local services in our communities across this province. This presentation will help you understand some of the basics, how it is that we arrived at that decision, and I'm most important of all, I'm here to answer as many any of your questions related to it. So let's begin. The words that you see at the bottom of that screen, imagining a prosperous future for our communities, really represents what we have endeavored to do through the What's Next Ontario and local share process. What's Next Ontario is a project that we began in the spring of 2015, and it represents one of the most ambitious engagements this association has undertaken in the last 10 years. We thoroughly discussed financial issues with municipal leaders in dozens and dozens of meetings in all corners of the province. The process had 3 specific phases to it. The first phase was to talk about what some of the challenges that we face as a sector and some of the economic realities that we have to deal with. The second phase was focused on talking about some of the solutions that might fix some of the challenges that we have. And again, we had a thorough discussion around the province, again, in that second phase. That third phase, which is where we are today, is to present the leading proposal to achieve sustainability, which has been unanimously endorsed by AMO's Board of Directors. In terms of what guided the discussion, above all else, we needed to be strategic and forward-looking. We needed to be flexible and accountable and present options that were transparent to the public. We had to consider options that represented good public and fiscal policy. We needed to be fair and equitable to the taxpayer. And above all else, we needed to look for solutions that were sustainable in the long term. And by sustainable for the long term, I mean sustainable for both orders of government, both for municipalities and for the provincial government itself. So what is the problem that we're trying to solve? So through the fiscal analysis that we did at AMO, we have determined that to deliver existing services and close the infrastructure gap, every year for the next 10 years, municipalities will need an additional $4.9 billion. That is a fairly astonishing sum of money, but I think that's probably reflected in some of the infrastructure deficits that you're facing here in the city as well. I want to point out that the problem statement makes a number of assumptions. So the first big assumption that it makes is that that need is on top of inflationary increases to property taxes and user fees. So we've assumed that all communities will raise those rates by inflation over the next 10 years. The second big assumption that we made is that all existing levels of federal and provincial commitments are fulfilled over that 10-year period. And that includes the cost share programs, and that includes also the infrastructure commitments that senior governments have made in as far as we know them. Certainly there, obviously, some of those commitments are just for the 4 years and are not necessarily for 10. So the size of this gap meant that we had to look at a broad range of options in order to close it. In total, we looked at 44 different options, and there's just a sample of what those options are on the screen, but many of them will be familiar to you. A fuel tax, an income tax, a land transfer tax. And we filtered all of these options through a number of measures. Sufficiency, how accountable are we to the public? Are there geographic impacts associated with using any one of those tools over another? And we boiled all of these options down to one leading option, and that is a 1% sales tax, which would do a number of things. First, it would help fund critical local services like roads, bridges, and transit. Number 2, it would reduce the upward pressure on property tax bills. And third, it would diversify how we fund local communities. A sales tax is used in other parts of the world to fund municipalities, including in 25 states south of the border. So it is a well-respected tool. How does this option line up against some other leading choices? Well, I'll just present two of those options to you. If we look to your existing revenue tools, what you have the power to do now, you have the power to use the property tax to raise those revenues. However, Ontarians already pay the highest property taxes in the country. And I think we have to ask some pretty realistic questions about whether those increases are achievable or even desirable. So the example that we've got on the screen here is that someone who is paying $3,000 a year in 2015 in property taxes, if we had to fund the gap entirely using the property tax, that person in 2025 would be paying about $6,700 a year, a fairly substantial increase. Another natural alternative is to ask the provincial government for further uploads. In terms of what this option looks like, it's true that the provincial government balanced its books this year. But we also have to account for the fact that the provincial budget shows a total debt of $341 billion for 2017-18. That's a substantial amount of money. The Provincial Financial Accountability Officer, who is independent of government and reports to the legislature itself, projects a steady deterioration in the budget deficit going forward. So against this backdrop, we have to ask some fairly honest questions about the likelihood of achieving additional financial responsibility from the provincial government. So that's a little bit of the history of how we've arrived at this bigger and bolder option. Let me now just walk you through some of the basics of how it would work. It would mean that it would increase the provincial portion of the sales tax by 1%. We currently pay 13%. This would raise the rate to 14%. And of course, in the recent past, Ontarians have paid 15%. After providing rebates for low-income Ontarians and administration costs, we believe that this produces about $2.5 billion per year. These dollars would be collected provincially and then redistributed to municipalities based on an allocation formula, and I'll talk about that allocation formula in a moment. What are the merits of this proposal? What would it do? Number one, it would diversify municipal revenues. It would close the infrastructure gap, and it would provide for your local needs. Number two, it means less municipal vulnerability to federal and provincial policy change. Number three, it is a more predictable way of financing infrastructure at the local level. And finally, it is a more progressive option. It reduces the upward pressure on the property tax rate. And of course, as you know, the amount of property tax an individual pays has no bearing on the income that they have. However, in this approach, there is a relationship. So, in terms of distributing these dollars, how does that work? Well, we used a sliding scale per household to do that. So our starting point is the distribution of $2.5 billion to 444 municipal governments. In a two-tier situation, the per household allocation is divided between the two tiers. So the share of upper tier own source revenue is what we used as a proxy for service responsibilities. So in practice, what that means is that if county or region X has 45% of the revenues for all municipalities in that county, then it would get 45% of those revenues.
Yeah. Mr. Wilson, I'm going to have to interrupt you and ask the members of committee to approve an extension to the time of the delegation. We do want to hear what you have to say. So, moved by Councillor Bowman. All in favor, committee? That's carried. Sorry.
Thank you. So in terms of the sliding scale that I talked about, this is what it looks like. So for the first 499 houses in your community, each household the municipality would receive $573, and that's the larger you get, the lower that rate diminishes the larger you are. So it has the merits of treating all municipalities the same, and it recognizes some of the larger challenges that larger communities have, while also representing some of the challenges that smaller communities have with respect to economies of scale. In terms of what that means to you, These are the allocations for Brampton. Brampton's allocation is $31 million per year. And you can see the other allocations going to the other communities. To Peel Region, $102 million, Caledon, $4.7, Mississauga, $46. So what am I here asking of you? A couple of things. First of all, we're asking elected officials to focus on the concept. What does it mean to diversify our revenues? Try on the idea. See how it fits. Number two, we're asking you to look at what does the local share mean for your community. How would it help you address your local needs? And certainly, I know you have a report from staff that already talks about how local share aligns with your local needs. So I know that you're certainly ahead of the game on that. Number three, if you have questions about this concept, please ask me. That's why I'm here. And number four, the resolutions and letters of support are welcome. We need your feedback as an association to advance this a little bit further. So, in concluding, all of the reports that I have referenced today are on the link that you see on the screen. And it includes 3 reports that we have written over the course of the last 3 years. Our first report, a fiscal overview, talks about some of the challenges by service, the services you provide across Ontario. The second report that we prepared details what we heard from elected officials in our travels across the province. And our third report is the action plan itself. It details exactly how the local share could work in terms of its approach across the province and the logistics of it. Also on at the link that you see on the screen are a number of presentations that we have made to conferences over the years. And it includes one particular presentation, a couple of presentations actually, from Nick Nanos. And Nick Nanos is a pollster. He does a lot of work for the Globe and Mail. I'm sure his name is probably familiar to you. During this process, we asked Ontarians at 3 different intervals what they thought of these proposals. And we asked 1,000 Ontarians in each poll, so it's very representative of the broader Ontario population, what they thought of it. In all 3 polls, a majority of Ontarians supported an HST increase if those dollars went to municipalities and if those dollars went to fixing the infrastructure challenge. In fact, in our last poll in June of last year, the percentage of Ontarians who supported the local share increased to 73%. 73% are in favor of this option if it fixes municipal infrastructure challenges. Ontarians, the other thing that we found through Nick's research is that Ontarians perceive municipal governments as being the order of government that is most responsive to their needs. Ontarians have an intimate understanding of what those local needs are, in large part because they live and experience them on a daily basis. To us, this is a strong voice of encouragement from the public. They have told us that they are willing to consider a bigger and bolder option, and I'm here today to invite you to consider what a bigger and bolder option might mean for Brampton. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Madam Chairman.
Mr. Wilson, for members of committee, there was a motion that was proposed on the back of the delegation form. I think you should all have that motion, Mr. Clerk. And I was just handed out a second motion by the Mayor's Executive Assistant in regards to asking representatives from the 3 political parties whether or not they would support local share should they be elected. So those are the 2 motions that we would be considering today. And just for a little bit of clarification, we have a lot of members of the public here today. Municipalities get about 8 to 9 cents out of every tax dollar collected. So 8 to 9 cents, and that's split between the city and the region. Our only source of funding is your property taxes, some of the service fees that we charge you, and if we're lucky enough to get a government grant. So it shows you the disparity between the amount of funds that municipalities can collect and their sources of income compared to the province and the federal government, who are getting 92 cents of your tax dollars paid. So the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, which represents the municipalities right across Ontario, we're saying we have to find a new source of funding, and so they have come up with this recommendation, which I believe has been supported by most of the mayors across the province, of an increase in 1% to fund that huge infrastructure gap so that we don't have to increase property taxes anymore. So I hope that makes it clear for the audience what we're discussing today. Okay, first speaker to this, Councillor Medeiros. Sorry, Councillor Gibson, I apologize.
I guess you jumped in front of me, that's why you missed my name. Thank you for coming. It's refreshing to have somebody from AMO here. I don't remember that ever happening before, so this is really great that you come, and especially to show the public that you represent us all through Ontario. I think if you took your speech there and just sped it up a bit and use your hands more, you should run for office. It was very good. I'd like to move receipt of the delegation and bring forward 92.2 and move receipt of that report also. And I'd be very pleased to move the motion that the mayor's office had circulated to us here, if the clerk can put it up on the screen. I'm not sure if you've seen it or not. Basically, it's in support of exactly what you're saying to us and what we've been saying all along too. So I'd be happy, Madam Chair, to move that motion.
In addition to the motion that was on the back, would you like to move that as well?
I'd be happy to do that too.
Okay. So I know the clerk's looking a little bit perplexed. So the one motion says that we are support of the 1%. The other motion is to ask the political parties. Is it the intention to move both motions?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's what I'm seeking clarification on, because the AMO proposed motion, I thought the motion that's moved by Councillor Gibson, drafted by the Mayor's office, was in place of that. If it's an addition, then we can move both, but I believe it's in place.
It's in place.
Yeah, I think the actual one that we've got in front of us from the mayor's office, I think is a better motion. Really, I believe that we have to go after all three political parties, as it says in here, and make sure it's exactly what we did last year on a lot of different issues in AMO when we were there, and we support what AMO's been doing. So I'd be happy to move at least that. I don't know if the other one's contrary, but I'll move that one anyway that we've got in front of us.
So
It's
can
on
I
the
have
board.
clarification then from the clerk, just for the benefit of all of council? Have we already, as a council, said that we endorse the recommendation of AMO for the 1%?
Through you,
Tax.
Madam Chair, no, not that I'm aware of. That's why the proposal is here before you. AMO has put forward this motion for municipalities across the province to endorse, to support this campaign, as outlined in the delegation. And I understand what Councillor Gibson has moved is essentially the same intent, just with different clarity on some of the language. And that's the motion that's presently before committee for consideration.
The only thing is, this motion does not say that Brampton Council supports the 1%. So just for council's discussion then. Okay? So Councillor Gibson has, as you know, have moved the report and the recommendation from the Mayor's office. Councillor Bowman?
Okay, thank you very much. I just have a question, if I could, about and Matthew, thank you for great work that you do with AMO, and when we were at the conference, it's evident that you guys are very, very busy people. So I appreciate that. The illustrative sliding scale allocation on 5.216 talks about the rate per household. What is the household based on?
So it's the 2014 financial information return is the household count that we used to calculate that. And so it includes all households. So for northern parts of the province, for example. It includes seasonal properties.
Yep.
In acknowledgement of the fact that a municipality still has to provide services regardless of whether or not the household is occupied.
Right. So it would not include illegal second units then, where we've got multiple families living within the same dwelling?
An illegal unit, unless that is accounted for in your household count, then it would not include.
Okay, so we have potentially 20,000 of them. So, you know, these numbers may not work out for not only the city of Brampton, but the city of Mississauga, where there's a lot of second units as well. So, it may be a little bit shortchanging the region of Peel in some aspects if we're not looking at those as well. And we've just got to come up with some way to look at those.
It is the purpose, in our conversations with elected officials about this entire concept. It was hard for people to understand what it would mean if they didn't know what dollars would flow from it. So what we endeavored to do is come up with an illustrative example of how we would distribute those dollars. So it is illustrative, and it uses the financial information supplied by all municipalities to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing in that household count.
Okay. I think, just from my standpoint, I think that's got to be jigged a little bit for municipalities where illegal second units are a huge, huge issue. I can't speak to if North Bay has the same issues that we have here, but I think, as it sits right now, I think that, Brampton and perhaps Mississauga, they can speak for themselves, but I think we'd be a little shortchanged on the transfer payments.
Do you account for illegal households locally?
No.
Okay.
No. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Sprovieri?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Matthew, for the presentation. You make it sound very good. The way you spoke, it sounds very enticing. But I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
Has AMO done the math to see how the taxpayer, you, I, and everyone else, how beneficial is it to put this 1% on the sales tax, or rather than increase the property tax to the general taxpayer? Are we getting a better deal with increasing the sales tax as a taxpayer, or does it really make a difference whether we pay through the sales tax when we go out and buy our food and our clothes and our cars and so on, or whether we slowly increase our property tax to come up with this funding?
That's a very good question. And certainly with respect to the property tax, obviously it's only paid by property owners and paid by renters through the rent that they pay to their landlord. So it targets a very specific segment of the population. The benefit of a sales tax is that it distributes that load. I mean, the reason you see those astonishing increases in property tax, if we use the property tax, is because of the base that it taxes. But a sales tax is a much broader base, and so its overall impact is diminished. And it also includes, and this is probably one of the key features of the proposal, that visitors to Ontario would also be paying a portion of their expenditures to support local services, and that currently doesn't happen in Ontario. So that's one of the merits of it, is that we already are the highest, the jurisdiction in Canada with the highest property taxes. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and we could go into the history of why that is, but we just felt that if we want to look at alternatives to what we can do now, this is an alternative to maintain the services and close the infrastructure gap, as we've talked about.
Yeah, and I see your... I understand that. I didn't think about it would hit people living in basement apartments and tourists and everyone else. So I see the benefit of that. I don't have a problem supporting this direction, although just thinking about the provincial side, whether they're have any appetite to, from their part, to increase, to make themselves look bad, to increase the sales tax. That's the issue that is really at hand here as to whether any provincial party would commit to raising the sales tax and make them look bad rather than just continue with the way it is and let the municipal councils look bad by increased property taxes. So I know you want to say something.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, that's a very valid point. And certainly in terms of the motion that has been tabled, of course, we did present this proposal in August of last year at the annual conference. And immediately afterwards, all three party leaders spoke to the conference and said that they were not in favor of raising the HST. So that deals a little bit with the motion that was tabled in that we have heard from them at that particular point in time. That was their answer. But I would also say, the province has also said no to communities that wanted to explore the land transfer tax. That was a debate that was discussed some time ago, and the answer to that was also no. In the words of Hazel McCallion, who provided some parting advice to elected leaders about her experience and her years in politics. And that was to never give up the fight with the provincial and federal government, never give up the fight on making the case for local needs and for the challenges that people have on a local basis. And I wouldn't expect necessarily, I didn't expect any one of the party leaders to stand up at a conference and say, yes, this is a great idea. But I think it's incumbent upon us as a municipal sector to, if we all feel that we have a challenge that we want to meet, that we speak with one voice. And certainly that's the way we were able 10 years ago to get social services uploaded from the property tax base by speaking with one voice over a consistent period of time in support of local communities. And I think that's what we're on the beginning stages of that now.
And I agree that we have to start the ball rolling, otherwise it's not going to start. The only comment I have is that from my research and knowledge is that the province of Ontario is spending the most on healthcare in Canada. The people in Ontario seem to, for some reason, be more going to the doctor in the hospitals more than other people in the rest of the province. I've seen a report where we're spending a huge amount of money compared to the other provinces, and maybe that's where the parties have to focus on, is trying to encourage people to become more healthy rather than rely on the hospital and the doctors to stay alive, and cut down the cost of healthcare so that some of those funds can be diverted to more critical. Healthcare is very critical. But I think a lot of people can do a lot better in keeping themselves healthy.
Councillor Sprovieri,
Yeah.
you're kind of swaying,
I know I'm swaying,
from the motion.
I understand, but I had to put that in because I think it's a big issue, and maybe you could take that back to AMO to sort of look into that.
There is a lot of competition for provincial treasury dollars, absolutely, and we've certainly heard from a lot of elected officials about things that they thought the provincial government could be doing differently. I guess the question that would flow from that is, let's say some additional efficiencies were brought about through the provincial healthcare system. Why do we as municipal leaders think that municipalities will be the first beneficiary of that? And there's no guarantee of that, and I guess that's a little bit of a challenge with trying to use that argument to get more provincial dollars.
Well, it's just to that point, it would be helpful to the general public if pay less on provincial taxes and a little bit more on municipal. So, it really balances out at the end of the day where the people will benefit, when we cut costs, cut waste, cut costs whenever possible.
Okay, so
Thank
we're
you.
debating an issue. Yeah, thank you. Good. Councillor Dillon.
I just want some clarity on the motion through the chair. The motion on the floor now is the one that, the mayor's motion, I guess, that Councillor Gibson moved, is that correct? That's the single one. Okay. I just have a quick comment as well. I don't think anyone can deny the needs of municipalities. But you had mentioned that we're already the highest taxed province in terms of property tax, municipal property tax, and essentially what we're doing is asking, because we pay high municipal tax, that we want to increase the provincial tax. I just do have an issue with squeezing more and more out of residents. The question I have is, number one, right now does HST allocate a certain amount towards a municipality, whether it's already 1% or 2%? Because I know we get funding from the gas tax, but specifically from the HST, is anything given to the municipalities?
Well, I mean, if we look at federal and provincial transfers in general to municipalities, certainly I think a portion, I don't think it's specifically allocated, but a portion of federal and provincial revenues do flow to municipalities. And no one's done a specific analysis about whether or not those are coming from property taxes or whether they're coming, from sales tax or income tax. But it would be a reasonable assumption to assume some of those dollars
Some does,
support.
but
Yeah.
in my opinion, I think what the real issue is government spending, with provincial spending, and how we spend it. Has it been looked into by AMO that, for example, it's 13% now, that 1% existing from 13 could be allocated specifically to provinces instead of increasing it, so that way the rest of whatever they collect can be, the spending, they can spend accordingly.
That's a very good question. You've kind of hit on the heart of the issue for a lot of people. But I would just take it back to the principles where we started from, that we had to come up with solutions that are sustainable for both provincial government and for municipal government. If our starting point was to lessen provincial revenues by $2.5 billion per year, that could affect the funds available for other cost share programs that you're dependent on. And we also considered that given the province's very tight financial situation and given the size of that provincial debt, that was not an option that was sustainable for the long term. At some point, the province is going to have to deal with that.
And I think municipalities are really handcuffed. And I think, and again, I'll go back to it, I think the issue is actually provincial spending. Has AMO taken a position, or has there ever been a discussion on exactly how the province spends its money, or if there's new revenue generation tools that the municipality can have? I'll give you an example, like Massachusetts a few years back, they got rid of their deficit by increasing user fees. So other than increasing tax per se, is there any other avenues that AMO has looked at to really cut this gap down?
Well, certainly we looked a lot at the legislative constraints that affect municipalities. I'll take interest arbitration as one of those examples. For many, many years, in our pre-budget submission, every year to the province, which provides our advice as municipal leaders in terms of what we would like to see out of the provincial government in the upcoming year, interest arbitration has featured prominently in that. As well as having the highest property taxes in Canada, Ontarians also pay the highest cost of policing per capita than than anywhere else in the country. And some of the reason for that is the rules related to labor relations for police, fire, and to some extent EMS as well. So we have been seeking ways of reducing municipal costs from the provincial government, but we have not been successful in getting them to agree to that. So it's not for a lack of trying in terms of asking for legislative changes, which would mean that municipalities could deliver services with less cost. But given the answers that we've had on that, that's one of the reasons why we've gone in the direction of the sales tax.
And I commend AMO. You guys have done an excellent job of, in advocating for municipalities. But if I'm not mistaken, I think wages have been stagnant for 30 years, something like that. And I think it's, when we get to go out and actually see the struggles of people and how much they are struggling and how much their taxes increased, but they're essentially at the end of the day still taking the same wage as they, when you compare it to inflation as they did 30 years ago. So commendable. I couldn't support a tax increase per se, but I will support the motion that is on the floor requesting the three provincial parties
Okay, thank you very much.
provide their position.
Councillor Dillon, we're going to conclude this conversation. The motion is on the floor. It's been moved by Councillor Gibson. It's also on the screen. All in favor of the motion? Noted that that's unanimous. Thank you very much, and thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, there also is a motion to receive the delegation and a motion to receive the report 9.2.2.
Okay, so those were all moved by Councillor Gibson. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
I will. Take care.
I believe it's Councillor Bowman now. This is under economic development. Take it away.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Chair, we now have a delegation today from Sharon Vandrish, President of Brampton Music Theatre. She's here to speak on behalf of the staff report regarding the displacement of the Brampton Music Theatre. Welcome, Sharon. And before you begin, I believe you probably will need more than 5 minutes.
If I don't breathe, I can get it to about 7 or 8, but yes, I do need more than 5.
An extension of the
Okay, we can give you an extra 5 minutes. Will that do it?
Yeah, that'll do.
All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, councillors, friends and supporters that are here with me. Before I begin, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Sharon Vandrish. I'm a resident of Brampton and have been for 40 years. I'm the president of Brampton Music Theatre, having been involved with BMT since I was in my teens. I have a degree in music, one in education. I'm a current member of the Ontario College of Teachers, Royal Conservatory affiliate teacher, and a National Gold Award-winning musical director. Now I understand that time is precious, so I'm going to move very quickly. Please interrupt me if you need me to take a breath or have any clarity, but we'll try to make this as quick as possible. There is a considerable appendices, which I will refer to in this presentation, but again, I'll go very quickly. So on December 19th, the city's economic department met with Brampton Music Theatre to deliver some messages to us that the rental pricing at Lester B. Pearson would be going up to $114 an hour from a current percentage of ticket sales rental rate, that the city was selling a renda and we have 6 months to vacate with no location to move to after a year of communicating real estate needs to us. Sorry?
It's okay. Take your time.
Okay. I rehearsed it to get it as close to 5. Okay. That renovations at Lester B. Pearson would take from 12 to 18 months, and that would displace our youth troupe program. And the Rose Theatre was going to reduce our rollover dates from 2 weeks to 1 in the spring of 2019. So, why are we here? I'll come back to this again at the end, but we're to ask the city to partner, promote, and facilitate one of the most successful self-sufficient non-profit arts groups in Brampton, which is in alignment with the recommendations in the proposed cultural master plan. Our requests in no order are to not sell a renda, but actually maintain it as a cultural arts building, to continue to support 2-week runs at the theatre and keep our patrons, which make up 25% of all attendees at that theatre in any given year, to allow 2, possibly 3 of our youth troupe shows that are displaced from Lester B. Pearson to be in the rows while they are displaced, and to continue to make Lester B. Pearson affordable for our youth troupe program. Just a little bit of history about us. We run 2 adult and 2 youth troupe productions annually. As well, on Saturdays, we run an affordable arts education program for kids 6 to 17 at little to no cost to the participants. Youth troupe participants that participate in the production pay a total of $25. They get 3 rehearsals a week for 2.5 months, and they participate in a musical that is 4 or 5 shows. This is essentially a free pro-social activity for children in Brampton. Adults pay a $40 membership fee for 3 rehearsals a week for 3.5 months, and they participate in 9 to 12 shows. All of the other production costs and fees for these 4 shows are borne by Brampton Music Theatre. In addition to this, we attract local students and schools who can come and see a quality production for $13.50, and that's in the thousands of students annually. Affordable, available quality productions for our community and our partners. BMT is currently financially independent, making all revenues from ticket sales alone, and receives no funding. We do run 3 bingos a month, and that supports specific costs for our youth troupe program. We also have a subsidized rental rate at Orenda, shared with other groups, which is well below market. However, we've never discussed the opportunity of paying more, which we absolutely could, or any other opportunities there, but we understand that the rental rate is below market value. That BMT has become an anchor rental, with our Rose Theatre, attracting 10 to 14,000 patrons annually. Orenda is currently our home. It's a home for our youth and our main stage production rehearsals, and we've been there for 10 years. And I would hazard to say that Orenda is not surplus to the city's arts needs, although it might be surplus to the city's business needs. I draw your attention to a press release published last year, which is in your appendices. It is Appendices A, and it just discusses the number of patrons that are actually attending the Rose annually. This 55,000 55,000 attendants. Of that number, 25% of them were Brampton Music Theatre patrons. So in 1 month, Brampton Music Theatre generates 25% of the patrons going to the theatre, and the other 11 months generate the other 75%. Why are we playing with this successful formula? Brampton Music Theatre is a sure thing. We're the guaranteed patronage. New patrons we are guaranteed patronage. New patrons are from all around because each cast has a different set of members, and therefore we're continuing to bring new patrons to the theatre. You'll see demonstrated by, this very small slide if you're this far away, but thankfully you have it in front of you, that BMT has generated approximately 50,000 patrons in the last 4 years. I have attached Appendices B, which shows reconciliations which validate these numbers. I only gave you 2 for the youth troupe program and 2 for the main stage program, but all of these numbers are accurate, and they have been provided to us from the city in our reconciliations. You can see that the information is significant. We also pay our fair share. If you look at those reconciliations, in rent, probably over $100,000 a year that we're paying to the theaters to be in there in the weeks that we're in the 2 theaters. I'm sure you're familiar with the Ontario Tourism Regional Economic Impact Model. We use this to actually determine our impact on Brampton. I removed the students from the attendee list to come up with a number of approximately 11,181 patrons in 2017. The economic impact to our city using a single day visit as the model was $1.2 million. We do this, I might add, as a nonprofit unpaid board of volunteers. Essentially, this is our donation to the city's arts and culture. I mentioned that the youth troupe will be impacted by a few changes, but I wanted to look at the numbers. Specifically, these children pay $150 for 11 weeks of instruction every Saturday in dance, music, and drama, and an additional $25 for the production. You can see by this slide that we barely cover the cost of a production with the theater costs the way they are. Moving us to pay a full community rate for Lester B. Pearson will take that additional small profit and have us paying our entire box to the theater. Essentially, we'd be putting on the junior musicals to feed the cost of the theater and the rental fees. Moving us down to Cyril Clark, which is the proposition to us, would not allow us to maintain the revenues that we have. The size of that theater is 1/3 the size of Lester B. Pearson during the renovations. It nets us less profit, and we will then be operating at a loss. I further note that if you increase the rental rate from what it is right now, 100% of the revenues will go to the theater with no profit to BMT. These aren't all the costs that we have to incur. We have costumes, sets, rights for shows, and so forth. So we barely break even with the way it is right now. Changing this rate makes it unaffordable for the children. More importantly is the impact on the 100 kids on average that we have in our programs. It's an affordable arts education. We would have to raise the fees to offset the proposed loss. Our students are basically paying $5 an hour for affordable arts education. That's cheaper than a babysitter. Our students would have less opportunity in the city, and I encourage you to read the extensive number of letters, which I'm sure you've received, and they are as Appendix F of the presentation from supporters and families in Brampton that discuss what BMT is to them and the difference it makes. Is this in line with your cultural master plan? I add that these families are of all races, religions, ages, and spiritual beliefs. To anyone and everyone, BMT is their home. I believe I go on to the next slide. Yes. Looking at our main stage show, which is the one that's in the Rose Theatre, if we are forced to further operate our main stage productions at a loss, we would not be able to generate enough revenue to offset the production costs. When I first took over Brampton Music Theatre, our ticket sales were $20,000 to $30,000 a year. A show. 6 years later, they are now $100,000 to $130,000 per show, and that's in a 2-week run. The majority of patrons do not think we're a community organization, but rather a professional series touring group. In providing professional caliber performances, we also need to up all the other associated costs. Costumes have to look better, sets have to be bigger, musicians professional. This is how we keep attracting great crowds, value for the patron's dollar. You can see that we have another loss in this area and our main stage production. By being pushed out of the theater, we wouldn't be able to generate enough revenue to support the production, and we already pay a significant amount of the fees for our revenues to the city. So how does that impact our city? What's the economic impact of less patrons to our theater by reducing our weeks in the theater and moving to Cyril Clark? $500,000. So if we can't bring those patrons in because we're not able to have the 2-week run at the Rose Theatre, if we can't bring the same number of patrons in because we're reduced from Lester B. Pearson down to Cyril Clark, this is the impact on our city. Next slide. What do other communities do? I'm part of an All Presidents group that meets once a year involving all of these organizations. We meet to share process and tools and even calendars, and we share costumes and set pieces with each other in order to support each other. In reviewing 13 other GTA groups and runs in their theater, I can advise you that the cities award them 2-week runs for all their organizations. Some actually get 3. I've listed all the organizations on this slide, but Mississauga actually has 5 groups that share one theater, and each group gets 2 weeks in their theater. When being advised if we were possibly had to vacate Lester B. Pearson, we did try to look elsewhere. We did call the Living Arts Center in Mississauga. We did call Milton, and the answer to us about possibly having time in their theater was we take care of our community first, and I think that's a great answer. Your own master cultural plan speaks about promoting, partnering, and facilitating the community. Your own plan proposes to make facilities more affordable and accessible. I did refer to the 2. One was I believe, a report and a presentation made to City Council. They are as the appendices attached. So why isn't the city beginning 2008 supporting their own recommendations? Why are they not following through with their own mandate for Brampton Music Theatre, the only musical theatre organization in our city, when other cities have up to 4 in Mississauga? Why are we being asked now to leave our facility and pay higher rental rates, which could cripple us in a 12-month period? It should be noted that the panel that made up this cultural master plan had 18 leaders, none of which were the 7 longest and largest performing groups in Brampton. So what does our city support? Sorry, that was the next slide. I have to make a couple of corrections here. My friends are here from some Brampton dance groups, and the intention of this slide, for clarity, is to really focus on the out-of-town dance competitions that come into Brampton and use our theater. We support Brampton dance and Brampton's needs for any organization here in Brampton, so I believe there is an error. I Googled dance competitions. Most of these I found. So if there is an error as to one being in the city and not, my apologies to my friends that are here from the dance community. So our theater actually entertains no less than 17 competitions and dance recitals. I do want to focus on the competitions, and I do want to focus on them being from out of town. This is the period of time we're being asked to relinquish our time in the theater. They are not promoted on the Rose Theater website, and while open to the public, not typically attended by the public as, and again, the competitions, they aren't really for an everyone type of event. They're typically for the parents of the participating dancers. No different really than a hockey or a soccer tournament. The general public doesn't attend, and they are also for-profit organizations. So how does this enhance our arts community? Again, not the recitals, but specifically to the competitions. Most of them are in the Rose, and yet our 55-year-old Brampton Music Theatre group gets bumped out for Oakville, Mississauga, Vaughan, Kleinburg, and Concord dance competitions. So why are they prioritized? And this is my guess, but they pay higher rent. So comparatively, the city prioritizes ice rink time for local Brampton minor hockey at a greatly subsidized rate. What if those hockey associations were bumped out of rinks for more expensive renters that could come in? Shouldn't our community come before out-of-town groups in terms of limited facilities, or really at any time? Additionally, we were told at our meeting, everyone is going to have to make an adjustment during the renovation period. The rollover dates have not been assigned in 2018 or 2019. 5 of our board members were present at that meeting, and yet I'm also on the board of the Rose Orchestra, and I can advise you the Rose Orchestra was not given any, they were given all of their dates. They were not asked to concede any, nor was the Brampton Concert Band. I'm curious as to whether this is because the Brampton Music Theatre pulled out of the Rose Theatre Presents series when the city refused to sell our tickets at our typical rate. I'd like to not think that that's the case, but one has to wonder. So, in summary, BMT models diversity, engaging people in the community of all ages, races, orientations, religious or spiritual beliefs. We're the premier organization in the GTA. Other groups look to us with respect. We collaborate with other arts groups, and we've provided many collaborations with the Rose Orchestra, the concert band, and we went so far last year as to donate $7,500 to the Rose Orchestra in 2017 in spirit of that relationship and our belief in the arts and culture in our city. BMT further donated an arts festival last summer at an intentional loss of $76,000. As a nonprofit organization and the president, I find it hard to have money in the bank. We're supposed to be breaking even, we're supposed to be seeding our next show. So we decided to put on an arts festival, and we donated that money to the city and the arts. Additionally, BMT, through its scholarship program, supports our youth by providing thousands of dollars in scholarships to its up-and-coming talent, seeking to better their craft via lessons or post-secondary education, further enhancing our city's culture and arts growth. This council is being asked to direct staff to accommodate BMT with sufficient dates as requested to support our main stage programs in the Rose Theatre. That time be allocated in the Rose Theatre for 1, 2, or 3 shows over the 12 to 18-month period that were displaced from Lester B. Pearson. That you not sell a renda or not sell it until you have sufficient alternative space allocated for BMT and other entities. The other entities in that space are Peel Panto Players, Brampton Festival Singers. There is an arts group, but I'm unfamiliar with the name. I can tell you that the other groups might not be able to afford to move, and they could fold. And this is not something that we want to see for the arts in Brampton. And that we not be delegated back to committee, because we wouldn't be here if the committee understood the impact of the decisions that they were asking of BMT. So basically, we need your support to continue to have sufficient revenue to remain self-sufficient. Thank you.
A little overtime, but that's okay. We had you slow down, Sharon, so that's okay. Very well done. Very informative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Clerk, would you like to remind us of what the rules for delegations are?
Certainly. Through you, Mr. Chair, to members of the committee and members of the audience watching or participating in today's meeting. So, unlike the last delegation where there was a staff report, then committee has the authority to debate the item and pass a recommendation as they did. In this case, and in the case of the next delegation after this one, 5.3, there is no staff report on this agenda accompanying this item. So under Council's meeting procedural rules, there's only 2 options the committee has in front of it. One is to receive the delegation and effectively take no action, or 2 is to refer the matter back to staff for a report. Those are Council's procedural rules, and the procedural rules are also very clear that the referral back should be without comment. So, and the practice and convention of this committee has been to perhaps ask questions for clarification of the delegation only, but debate on this matter should not proceed because the matter should be referred back to staff, and those are Council's procedural rules. And when a report comes back after the referral, then the delegations would be contacted and are welcome to come back and delegate to council at that time.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to move that we waive the rules of procedure on this item to allow council to have a further discussion and get more information before we refer back. So that would be my motion.
Oh, should we be going to the board, Mr. Clerk, first?
Yes, you're the chair.
Okay, thank you.
Unless you entertain somebody else, yes.
Okay. Councillor Miles, you are on the board, so can we hear some other people first, and then...
It's just, I think when it's a procedural issue like this, council should consider waiving the rules of procedure first before we get into the discussion. If you don't want to waive the rules, then we don't. But otherwise, we're really hamstrung to not have a discussion if we don't.
Okay, I'm still going to go through the board first because they are on there, but you'll be very welcome to put that on when we come to it. And then we can have 2/3 vote. Mr. Clerk would have to...
If council chooses to waive its procedural rules, which the clerk never usually recommends, but it's the will of committee, it's a 2/3 vote, which there are 8 members here, so it would be 6 votes.
6 votes, okay. Okay, I will go to the board then. Councillor Gibson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Sharon, for coming. I'm going to move referral back to staff because that's our procedural bylaw, and I'm glad that Sharon came today. I'm not going to speak to it because I'm asking for the referral, but I spoke to staff this morning. I understand there's a report coming shortly, I think. And I think we need to hear from staff before we open up the floor to any debate. So I'm going to move referral back to staff. I've heard from other groups too that I'd like to hear from eventually too. So I'm going to move it back to staff for a report. Maybe Mr. Darling could tell us when to expect that report will be coming.
So through the chair, there's a number of items that were brought up today. And one of the items was the space at Arenda Road. So in working with our facilities team, we feel comfortable maybe coming back with something on that in the next 4 weeks on that specific topic. The other topics we'd like to present in a report. As you've heard earlier in the fall, Brendan Healy did a presentation on the vision for the Rose Theatre and the Performing Arts. We are under construction of a $2.5 million investment into Lester B. Pearson, and we in the Culture Division fully support and really do want to promote our cultural groups. But I will say that I think just to keep it as simple as possible today, we'd like to follow up with a report and looking at all the issues that are presented today. Because at the end of the day, the challenge that we have is extremely similar to the grant program that we presented to you last year, is that we're looking for fair and equitable across the city for all our groups. So, and I met with the group on Friday. We fully support this group. We fully support the vision of this group. But we're challenged by the fact of a particular real estate site. But we're also on the heels of probably the most exciting thing for the city of Brampton. And you'll see right after these delegations, Kelly Stahl and Victoria Mountain will present the cultural master plan that will launch on February the 1st, tomorrow, that will hit 70 different sites across the city in 60 days to find out what our community really wants to hear and really wants to do. And I will stand here as the director of this of culture, that we understand and we've heard from the community that space is the #1 issue that you all require, and we feel strongly in that subject as well. But we want to see it through those next 60 days and come back with a real strategic plan. So that's what I'm asking council, is when we come back with a report, we'll have all the information, and we'll continue to meet with the groups, and we'll continue to try to work out the next 6 months, year at Arenda Road in order to make sure they can feel comfortable. But you have our commitment in the Culture Division. Thank you.
You okay, Councillor Gibson? Okay. So we've got a referral on the floor. Speaking to the referral, Chair Willens.
Thank you, Chair Bowman, speaking to the Bureau. Thank you for your presentation, Sharon. But I do have to, on slide 21, I think that's the last slide that's up there, where you say that we not be delegated back to staff who don't understand and comprehend the challenges we are identifying. I kind of take exception to that because as a member of the Cultural Master Plan Committee and the Chair of Economic Development Culture, I was 100% supportive of bringing a new direction back in the late 2016, I believe it was, to bring economic and culture together. So I'd like to publicly go on record that I have complete confidence in our staff. I believe Mr. Darling has transformed this division, and his background in business and relationships to the arts is exactly what this city needs. Kelly Stahl also brings years of background in economic development and culture, and is a driving force behind this new exciting cultural master plan. Council, you may recall, and I think Bob Darling alluded to it, Brendan Healy's presentation last fall, where he mapped out his vision for the Rose Theatre and the state of performing arts in our city. I also recall he got a huge ovation from many of us here at Council, and he was asked to come back and provide quarterly updates. So Council, I want to thank our staff. I fully support their commitment to the arts, and I'm looking forward to see Brampton's first master culture plan this June, and I'm looking forward to the report back from you. Thanks. So thank you.
Councillor Willens, are you supporting the referral, or?
I'm supporting the referral, absolutely.
Okay. That's it?
Yeah, I'm done, sorry.
Thank you very much. Councillor Miles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You do have a motion that we waive the rules of procedure so that council can discuss this issue. I do believe that this is a little bit different than other issues where we have delegations come forward. We have no knowledge of the subject that is at hand. It's new to us. We've had discussions. I raised this at the last committee of council as well. So I would like to have the opportunity to at least have a little bit of discussion about this, because I don't believe that the motion of referral really does address the request of the Brampton Music Theatre. So my motion would be to waive.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there are 9 members in the chamber right now, so 2/3 would be 6. And a motion's been placed to waive the rules of procedure, so it's an appropriate motion. Okay, through you, Mr. Chair, recorded vote's been requested, so all in favor of waiving the rules of procedure in regard to this.
There's a referral before, does that not go first?
Councillor Gibson does have a referral on the floor.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the 2 motions are in conflict. The procedure bylaw probably does not contemplate this, because it doesn't contemplate waiving the procedural bylaw in terms of the precedence of motions. Referral is a priority motion over an amendment or a main motion, but this is a motion a significant motion to waive the rules of procedure, so my advice to committee is that is a proper motion and should take precedent over the referral.
Okay. So a recorded vote has been called, Mr. Clerk.
All in favor of waiving the rules of procedure, please stand to be counted. Showing in favor is Councillor Miles, Councillor Fortini, Councillor Medeiros, Councillor Sprovieri, and Councillor Paleschi. All opposed, please stand to be counted. Showing opposed is Chair Bowman, Councillor Willens, Councillor Dillon, and Councillor Gibson. Mr. Chair, the required 2/3 has not been achieved. The vote is 5-4.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
You still have the floor.
I still have the floor. Then, speaking to the motion, I guess my question is through you, Mr. Chairman, to staff. The motion really doesn't address the specific requests of the Brampton Music Theatre. And I know as a member of council at the end of the day, we're the ones that are going to have to make some decisions in regards to the request. So I guess through to staff, how can we be assured that council, as a member of council, we actually are able to participate in the discussions regarding the requests of the Brampton Music Theatre, so that when so that we have a really good understanding of the issues before it actually comes back to council. So I'm looking, Mr. Schlanger, can you answer that?
Through you, Chair. I mean, we've had staff meet with the group. We've got a clear 90-page, I believe, delegation that we're going to be reviewing. This is a cross-functional team because it has a real estate impact, so I'll make sure that I oversee it, that there's probably components of the request, like the real estate component is quite critical for them to make sure they know the path ahead, so we'll get working on that first. The culture master plan's coming forward to council in June, so we'll try and phase things in, but we're going to be very comprehensive in responding.
Okay, so this is, I'm not speaking to the referral. I don't want to cast any aspersions on the adequacy of staff, but as a member of council, I want to have a voice, and I want to have an opportunity to meet with the group and discuss. There's a lot of information here, and this information doesn't only impact the Brampton Music Theatre, it also impacts the economic viability of our theatre and a lot of other things. I believe that council should be a part of the discussion. So if I need to, I will follow up with staff. But if I do not have the opportunity to meet with the groups and staff, then I will have the opportunity to do it on my own. And I would prefer to do it in collaboration with staff. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Miles. Councillor Medeiros.
Thank you, through the chair, and I echo a lot of what Councillor Miles has just raised here. I guess speaking to the referral, I'm hoping the report really comes back and really speaks to the needs identified by this music theatre. I will say it's frustrating because there's some information that I would really want to address is the importance of Orenda. Why Orenda? Why not somewhere else? What are the advantages? Clearly we're dealing with a group that's really been a success story here, and I'm hoping that, and this is almost, again, not speaking to the referral, there has to be that context of the cultural master plan, and how does that, the equity in the system and so on, but it's defining equity, and this is where some groups, equity makes sense, and there's some groups, this is clearly a success, and so it's a difficult side. I just hope the report speaks to that type of equity, or defining what type of equity that we're dealing with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Medeiros. Councillor Sprovieri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm okay with the referral, but I'd like to ask staff, when you bring back the report, you're aware of all the concerns that have been presented to us today. Will you be bringing back some proposals on how to address the concerns of the group, or is that the intent when you bring back a report to us?
So through the chair, and as I mentioned earlier, you're going to see a presentation about the Culture Master Plan. And as I also said earlier, one of the things that we understand is space for our groups. And we have many groups across this city. So one of the challenges is that we need to be fair and equitable to all. We need to understand some type of fair system. Many other cities bring in an application-based system. They apply for the space. They're in for a certain period of time. I have had some conversations with this group. One of the challenges with this group, which is a success story, is that they need a space to build their sets. And we, Commissioner Menez and I, have gone out to about 4 or 5 sites to look at how we could best look at these things. The challenge the city has in our inventory today is we don't have a specific site to call a work area, or workbench area, where table saws and so forth can be required. So in my conversation on Friday with the group, one of the suggestions was that they could potentially rent a small industrial place that they could build their sets in at pays market value, and then we would look at a collaborative space, and that's something I think that will come out of the vision of, and I don't want to speak to the vision because I don't want to by any means be biased to the vision, but we know space has been a requirement. We see a space or a hub or a creative building that many groups can utilize and be fair and equitable. So the one challenge we do have is that is that one thing about the workbench area that, and we're having further conversations with them.
In particular, just through the chair, I heard in the presentation some issue about the elimination of rollover dates. Yeah, so it sounds like this is a very serious issue for the group. And I actually have received some emails from other groups about this issue. Will that be addressed when you come back?
Absolutely.
Report?
Yeah, absolutely.
And try to resolve the concerns that the group
Absolutely.
had. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sprovieri. Mr. CEO, did you want to speak? I saw you reaching for the button. No? Okay. Councillor Paleshi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record. I just want to make sure that everything that was captured, or that everything in this delegation is going to be captured in the report coming back. Space, well, first, like percentage-wise with tickets, there's a lot of questions in here that I fully don't understand, and I don't think it's ever been really brought forward to this council in a direct manner. So I just want to make sure that it will be captured in the report coming back.
Through the chair, absolutely.
And then also with space, I understand that you have gone, and we've heard that before, that you guys have undertaken, other space in the city of Brampton just to look to see where we can accommodate not only this group but all groups, and that probably is going to come back in the master plan as well. I wanted to, as much as I would like to see you come to Cyril Clark, because it's just around the corner from my house, I completely understand that the space is an issue. I would like to just, for referral purposes, for when this comes back, maybe if you explore the Siemens property and the warehouse in there that has lots of space in there for everything. I think that it's a lot bigger than Arenda Road, I think. So I know that's, there's complications with that, but it is a space that isn't necessarily on the chopping block per se. So if we could look at that space, and I'm sure you've looked at all spaces and other spaces, but if that could come back, I'd appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor Paleshi. Just wait to see if one of them, no, okay. Councillor Miles.
So timing is obviously an issue here. When would we expect the report back?
So through the chair, I think we can bring back within 4 weeks something to do with the real estate situation, and we'll try our best to look at the rest of the information. It might take 6 weeks on that, but I would say 4 weeks, because I think that's the big issue with their space. So I think we can bring back to in 4 weeks on that issue.
Okay, so am I allowed to ask a question, even if it's a referral, to the delegation? Just because it's a timing issue, and it pertains to use of theater in order for the production of shows. So could I? It's germane to the referral.
Okay, if you can ask it in terms of the referral.
Okay. Ms. Vandrish, if you could come forward, thank you. So just in terms of, a lot of the conversation here was not just about losing your space at Arenda, but it was about being able to continue in the viability of rental space for your group and transitioning. So it's obvious that timing is an issue. If this is referred back, how does that impact your schedule for moving forward on production?
Originally in the meeting we had, we were told that the renovations would begin in September of 2018, but I believe the city office has told us now that will be at the end of the year, because we were then told we had Lester B. Pierce until the end. So I think 2018 is okay, but my concern is that 2019, we book shows 18 months out, the rights for shows, and the theater locks up the Rose Theater Presents series pretty much this month, if not already next month. So waiting 6 weeks on that issue will significantly impact 2019 spring and the dates that we need to be profitable. And so I'm not trying to push you to do something, but time is of the essence, and it's important.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Schlang, I didn't hear what you said. You were offering assurances?
I just said that we would meet with her concurrently to the report, so try and offset any type of
Good.
jeopardy of 19.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
Am I allowed to ask what the direction is? It's just to meet again, or do we have all the points that we're...
There is a motion on the floor that's moved by Councillor Gibson.
Do you have that?
Can we show it?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I think the motion was very general in nature, but essentially it's two things: to receive the delegation, and two, that the content of the presentation and delegation request be referred to staff for consideration and report back to committee in a timely manner.
I don't think that one's on, Gail. Councillor Miles, sorry.
Okay. My only
Yeah, you're still on.
My only concern with this is it says that the presentation be referred to staff for consideration in the development of the master plan, which, yes.
Councillor Miles, that particular one is not on the floor. Councillor Gibson's is a very generic one that says we
Just refer it. for
refer it
response.
back, that it answers all the
Good.
questions in the report.
Thank you. That's good.
Thank you very much. Move that the chair be heard. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming, Sharon. Thank you for all the correspondence we got, and we do appreciate that. I also hope that Mr. CAO, working concurrently, we can accommodate the 18-month stretch that they've got between now and their 2019 shows. And Kelly, you were shaking your head earlier, so you know the Rose Theatre programming. And also when it comes to looking at a space, I think it's pretty important that we look at space that everybody, all the groups, like a hub, can use, because I think the opportunity for collaboration between all the various arts groups in Brampton is phenomenal. So I'm hoping that we just don't go out and try and find a space where sets can be built. I'm hoping we look at a place where sets can be built, where recording can be done, where practicing can be done, rehearsals can be done. So I hope that you look at that as well when you're looking at your report, because it is very, very important. Thank you very much. Seeing no other questions, can I have a motion to receive the delegation? Councillor Miles, all in favor? That passes. Thank you very much. Oh, and I guess we have to pass the referral. Referral is on the floor through Councillor Gibson. All in favor? That carries. Yes, if you want to stay, we are having a presentation after the next delegation on the Cultural Master Plan, if you have time. Okay. So we will move on to the next delegation, which is Carmen Spoda, and he would like to talk to us about the proposed programming for 2018 World of Jazz Festival, community initiatives, and office space requirements as well. Welcome, Carmen.
Thank you. Thank you. Right. I'm good. I got that. Thank you. Just before we begin, Council, Joe and I would like to offer a little token of appreciation for supporting us in our inaugural World of Jazz Festival in 2017. This is signed by the leaders of all the ensembles that we had play on September 9th, 2017 in downtown Brampton. And we just hope that we don't see this hanging in a bathroom here at City Hall. So whoever we can give this to for safe hands. But this is just a token of our appreciation for your support. Thank you.
Do we need a motion to accept the gift, Mr. Clerk? Thank you very much. That's very nice.
Yeah. And Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, I'm just asking an extension of no more than 10 minutes for our presentation.
Okay, all in favor of an extension?
Thank you.
Go for it.
Morning, members of council and senior staff. My name is Carmen Spoda. I'm born and raised here in Brampton, and I currently reside in Ward 6 with my wife and children. I'm a pianist, vocalist, composer, arranger, and educator, and although fluent in many different styles of music, I most commonly reside in the styles of jazz and world music. I hold 2 Bachelor of Music degrees, one in piano performance, the other in jazz composition, from Berklee College of Music in Boston, Massachusetts, largely regarded as the #1 institution in the world for the study of contemporary music. In addition to balancing a hectic schedule of performing, teaching, lecturing, and composing, I, along with my good friend and music enthusiast Joe Asensio, founded Be Jazzed, a non-profit organization in late 2016 with the intention, at the very least, of trying to establish an annual jazz festival here in Brampton, but also finding ways to rejuvenate and create opportunities for musicians through performances, education, and philanthropy. Though jazz music is at our core, it is the freedom expressed through improvisation that jazz musicians excel at. And we believe that this freedom of unique and personal expression can be taught to musicians of all styles, ages, abilities, and cultures. As community grant recipients in 2017, Be Jazzed received the extraordinary opportunity to launch its concept for an annual jazz festival. Titled World of Jazz, the festival highlighted many various interpretations of the definition of jazz, as well as featured ensembles performing jazz with multicultural influences and interpretations, not to mention that over 60% of our programming featured jazz musicians either originally from or residing in Brampton, a feat that was not accomplished in the previously two failed jazz festivals in Brampton. We are currently preparing our 2018 festival built around the same concept and programming, but we'd like to spread that over a 2-day event. Staying consistent with our mission of performances and education, we have also put together a program of offerings for 2018 that we are in the midst of managing right now. We have submitted these to the Arts and Culture building stream of community grants for most of the projects that are listed here. The current offerings are the ones that we're running right now, and the prospective ones are the ones that we're working on building and getting support for. This program schedule here for 2018, plus a 2-day jazz festival, plus administration costs, will cost just over $300,000 for us to operate at Be Jazzed, of which 95% of these programs are being offered free to the community. Not included in these costs are office space, where we can operate the administrative as well as the educational components of Be Jazzed on a daily basis. We believe that since so much of what we are doing is directly benefiting the broader community, as well as contributing to the definition of a vibrant arts and culture scene here in Brampton, that these initiatives should be supported by the city, specifically through council-approved funding and use of space. I would love to be standing here today and asking for that motion to be tabled, that council would support us with our needs in funds and our needs for space. But through various conversations and observing previous delegations here at council, we know that those types of deals are not the direction that this council and administration wants to go and support. However, what I would like to bring to council's attention this morning is the disparity in how arts organizations are sustained and supported in the city of Brampton. And there are numerous groups in this city who have enjoyed many years of either annual operating funds, rent-free space, subsidized rents, or all of the above directly delivered from council. In the arts community, we've heard and been told that these are grandfathered deals. And I can assure you that there's a contingency of organizations who are desperate to become grandfathers. The problem is, because of grandpa's age, these deals do not exist anymore. Yet while these organizations can rely on this municipal support year by year as an opportunity to build revenues, notoriety, and capacity building, other non-for-profit groups, such as ourselves at Be Jazzed, are being told to apply to community grants where the available pool of money is not nearly enough to benefit the sheer amount of organizations that apply or are worthy. Not to mention the inability to use that funding on any staffing or administrators, as well as the expectation to provide financial statements scrutinizing the appropriate use of funds. How can we build unity as an arts community to create a vibrant city when there are warring factions based on the truth of the disparity of arts funding? Community grant recipients who are using taxpayer dollars have to submit financial statements as well as audits if requested. But other arts organizations in this city who are also using taxpayer dollars do not have to show a single receipt, can pay staff and administrators, and most importantly, pay subsidized or zero rent. There's virtually zero accountability required for their use of funds and space. And if there has been any accountability, it has always come at a time of great need or crisis to their organization. This is not fair, and this is not equitable treatment of arts organizations in the city, and I believe that you as council have two options to consider in rectifying this issue. The first would be to allow all delegations from all arts groups to present their case, demonstrating their viability, demonstrating their need to the city of Brampton, as well as requesting financial sustainability and use of space coming directly from council, as things have been, or that you suspend financial support and use of space for arts groups currently receiving these benefits by, let's say, by the end of 2018, and focus on implementing a system where all arts groups are judged based on their viability within a criteria-based system such as what already exists in community grants. This inequality has to stop, and I'm urging you as a professional and as a council to consider this in your discussions today. There's a simple business point that I would like you to consider in understanding the seriousness of the facts that I've presented you with here this morning. It's called return on investment. Do you think if the investments made into these privileged arts organizations year by year by this council and previous councils, if they were so viable and organic, do you think we'd be having these conversations or hearing from a multitude of frustrated arts organizations in Brampton? Wouldn't these privileged groups be operating at such a visible level that we wouldn't be able to deny their worth, existence, or relevance to our city? Wouldn't we be able to attach certain qualities, characteristics, alumni, and accomplishments to the work that they would have achieved over so many years? Why would they continue to ask for their bills to be paid by council if they were so sustainable? The main reason that we have the need for an arts and culture master plan is because these arts organizations that have been municipally sustained and supported for these many years have failed to create the vibrancy and artistic definition in downtown Brampton that we have all been waiting for. The excuse that the absence of an arts council has caused demise to arts here in Brampton is false, because upon the extinction of the arts council, these privileged entities continued to enjoy municipal endowment and yet still could not find ways of instituting themselves as arts and culture leaders and ambassadors, not to mention independent sustainability, and the case of some, no corporate sponsorships. The only person who was on the trajectory to define arts and culture in this city was the brilliant and visionary maestro Robert Raines, the principal conductor and face of the former Brampton Symphony Orchestra. And if he were alive today, we would not be having these conversations. I want to conclude with a recommendation that I would like to see moved here this morning. Within the arts community, the need for space is nearly equal to the need for funding. And again, seeing arts organizations misuse space doesn't take away the pain and need for groups who genuinely need a location to create, organize, teach, rehearse, and administer, especially if they are community grant recipients with a municipal expectation on their product. Brampton clearly has numerous surplus buildings, as well as empty buildings located here in downtown that could be made readily available for arts organizations to convert into a gallery, performance hall, arts hub, incubator, whatever. We at Be Jazzed can attest to the need for a location where we can perform, teach, meet with sponsors, house our administrative staff, and most importantly, as a non-for-profit, build capacity in the city of Brampton by operating year-round and instituting ourselves in the community. But at prices between $19 to $24 a square foot here in downtown Brampton, we just don't have the $40,000 for a year's rent, especially in this, our second year of existence. If we are awarded community grants for 2018, we will have to deliver on the promises that we have proposed, and a large part of those depend on having a location to call our own. Therefore, I would like to ask Council this morning to refer a motion back to staff, directing staff to report on and research ways in which awarding use of space is based on fair and equitable division and a fair and equitable system for all arts organizations in order to allow them to operate and build capacity, and in turn contributing to the creative and vibrant city that we are so desperate to cultivate. An example of such may be patterning the viability to use of space off of the current community grant model, which judges viability in order to receive funds. There are stringent terms in what makes an organization worthy of funding, and such terms could be revisited in order to determine what will allow an organization to have access to space. In closing, we at Be Jazzed believe that the upcoming Arts and Culture Master Plan will outline solutions to many of the problems we face in the arts community here in Brampton. And the reason that we believe this is because for the first time in a very long time, staff is listening and sensitive to the needs of the artists in this community. Throughout 2017 and over the last few months since the Jazz Festival, we at Be Jazzed have engaged in productive and engaging and motivating conversations with Bob Darling and his staff at Arts and Culture, as well as Brendan Healy and his staff at the Rose Theatre. We finally have a staff that wants to know about the challenges we face and is willing to research multiple options on how to overcome them. We are optimistic that continued dialogue, as well as the findings of the Arts and Culture Master Plan, will set Brampton on the creative trajectory that it so desperately needs. And we at Be Jazzed look forward to our contributions as an arts organization in the city of Brampton. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carmen. Again, a very well prepared and very well spoken delegation. Thank you very much. We have a couple of people on the board. Oh, Joe, did you want to say anything? We're a little short of time, but if you'd like to say hello.
Good, I think he said it all.
He said it all very well. Thank you. Councillor Gibson.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to go against what I believe, and that would be to refer this back to staff right away, only because I need to correct Carmen on a couple of things. And Carmen, I agree with 99% of what you just said. However, I have to say, did you attend the first two jazz festivals that we had here?
No, I didn't. I was working.
So you made a statement that we had 2 failed attempts. Where did you get that from?
Well, if you look at how many cities in the country have run multi-year jazz festivals that are smaller than Brampton, Newmarket, Sudbury, Niagara Falls, Halifax, Medicine Hat, Sudbury, these are multi-year, Guelph going on 25 years. The city of Brampton, not this council, but the people put in charge of trying to get that jazz festival off the ground, couldn't get past year 2. And so from our point of view, and my point of view as a professional musician, it's never the music that really is the concern or the reason for that, because the musicians are all professionals and all, some of the top notch. If you look at some of the people who played that festival, Branford Marsalis, Dr. John, these are Grammy Award winners, My belief is that it's always the groups administering them, and in that case you had a group from outside of Brampton who, and as I said, didn't program almost any Brampton musicians. How can you create something that will sustain in this city when it's not built for the city, it's built to be.
Okay, so let me correct you then, because I was very involved in it. In fact, I was the council member who the Art of Jazz approached to bring the Jazz Festival to Brampton. I got no support by any council member except for council as a whole endorsed once we had a report in front of it. Only 2 members of council showed up to the first one, and it was a huge success. So I take exception to you saying we had 2 failed attempts. It was huge. It was the first time that square was full. The Rose Theatre was completely jam-packed full. The workshops were full in the first attempt. What happened, and I kept my mouth shut all these years because it just went away. What happened in the second attempt was the politics got involved. All of a sudden, our mayor at the time, and a couple of council members wanted
Councillor Gibson, we sort of got to keep on the questions and the clarification of the delegate.
I'm not moving referral. I haven't moved referral.
No, I think you're straying off a little bit about what happened during...
I'm just trying to correct what he said.
Okay, can you sort of streamline it down a little bit?
Okay, anyway, just so you know, because I agree with you, and I'm really glad to hear it today. That first year was a huge success. The second year, politics got involved, and the Art of Jazz, under force from some people to get better and bigger people involved, that's how it failed. And it failed, and it failed because even some of the board members on the Art of Jazz resigned from the Art of Jazz because of the direction it was going. And that's why it failed. And if the politics hadn't got involved here, it probably would still be going today. Okay, so I want you to know that. Because I do agree with you 100%. I'm so glad that somebody came back and brought a jazz festival back to Brampton, because it is a tremendous thing for Brampton to have. So.
Can I answer to that?
We don't want to get into a debate.
Okay.
So.
All right, cool.
I just think it's important that he know, because these guys are putting on a jazz festival that was good last year, but let me tell you, that first year, you haven't met that yet. You haven't met it yet, and I hope you do. I really do hope you do. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Gibson.
Somebody else move referral, please.
Councillor Medeiros.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for the presentation, and I guess just some questions just for, I'd also like to move referral, but I'll leave that, allow Councillor Miles the opportunity to speak.
Okay.
What was your operating budget for 2017?
So 2017, we received a community grant of $42,250. We were able, and that community grant came down around March 1st time, so we had about 6 months to put on this first event. We were able to raise approximately $18,000 in local sponsors and corporate sponsors. So our operating cash was approximately $60,000 just over 60, but our total festival cost was just over $86,000. So we had about $26,000 of costs that are called in-kind, but that becomes, unpaid work. That becomes leaning on a resource of JN Realty, doing whatever it takes to get that done. And, Councillor Gibson saying we're not at that first year level yet of Art of Jazz. From what I remember, the cash gift that they were given in their first year and the in-kind gift that they were given in their first year is nothing close to what we got. Although how gracious and thankful we are to be able to try and get that festival on, I'd like to show you what we could do on those type of resources, and it will be said that that means, that operating budget includes zero revenue to the organization. That operating budget means we have nothing to carry forward to try and do anything else. That's not the city's problem. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that's not easy to deal with when you look at other groups who, because of protected bylaws or deals, are getting any of those things I've talked about, cash, rent-free or subsidized space, and we're paying top dollar for everything. I mean, we ran that whole festival in 6 months out of a 150 square foot boardroom, and I don't have any, if you look at our 2-day for this year, it's very ambitious. I have no problem in delivering it based on getting the proper resources, and I can't expect to lean on JN again like that for this year. It's just not fair. It's just not right.
Now, through the chair, another question, I guess. One of the issues organizations always have is that sustainable funding, right? So it's that 1 year after year, and how do you plan, project? And something I've always thought about, is it possible, how would an organization like yourself, which showed promise, your first event was quite successful, I attended, a lot of folks from outside of Brampton, almost like a multi-year grant where it was like a, I don't know, 2 to 3 year or 3 to 4 year, but every year there would be that accountability, that, evaluation, but that grant would be sort of there and saying, well, if you meet the needs in your first year and your second year, growing something like that, would that something that would help an organization like yourself?
It's funny that you mention that, because if you look at certain grant streams like Trillium, Ontario Music Fund, some of the big grant streams in this country and province, some of those are multi-year deals that either wean off by the end or give you an equal share for those 3 or 4 or 5 years. And those first 3 to 5 years are the most crucial, because that gives you the stability to get your notoriety online and with annual festivals, to be able to get your staff, to be able to get your space, to then be able to go to Trillium and these organizations who need you to be charitable. There's so much funding that we can't access because we're not charitable yet. We're not for profit, we're not charitable. That's a $10,000 legal fee. Some Ontario Music Fund wants like 2 years of incorporated, books, So that's pushing year 3. So, from a community grant point of view, or from like what Trillium does and stuff, if you give a structured look at funding, that's great, because it gives us a chance to know, okay, we got a 3-year chance here. We can build by year 3, and as this group's weaning off, hopefully we'll have the notoriety in the build to be able to grab from that corporate sponsor like TD that owns every festival in this country, But if you're not operating year by year, like to go to TD now and ask them to come back to Brampton based on the history, and we were up against that history trying to institute this festival. Oh, jazz doesn't work here. We tried it, doesn't work. But first of all, what is jazz? Second of all, what is Brampton? And third of all, how are we using the money? So from a tiered look at funding, I'm all for that, because it puts responsibility on the organization. Hey, year 3 and 4, your money's running out. Can you pay your bills? If not, sorry, but that's on the organization to build sustainability. It cannot be anymore coming to the city and looking for it, because otherwise this should just be a free-for-all. Every week delegation should just be, hey, I got this group, fund me. Hey, I got this group, put me here. And if y'all want to deal with that, cool, but I'm under the understanding this isn't the direction we want to go. I thought that was the whole arts and culture master plan. So and we're looking at trying to do this festival again and trying to run these programs, and it's like, there's disparity.
And just lastly, through the chair, 2018, one of the things that really, I guess, interested me last year was hearing about all the programs, workshops, all these activities that you do adjacent to the actual festival. I'm not sure about the previous jazz festival that was referenced here, but this component of giving back to the community, I think, is extremely appeasing. And I tell you, because we're dealing with public dollars, notwithstanding the economic impact, but those community programs, and can you just speak to about what you got for 2018, for example, what you have planned?
Yeah, I didn't because I wanted to keep to the time, but currently, and as of 2017 as well, we're hosting Monday night education series. We've been working with Julie Andrews-Jotham at the Four Corners Library, and they've given us the makerspace on Monday nights to host composition and improvisation classes that we've been recruiting high school students and enthusiasts from the festival. So those have been on Monday nights. Jason Rosso at J-Red came to us after the festival and loved what we did, and has started a weekly Sunday night series called Jazz at J-Red that we're programming. Be Jazz, they'll be programming the groups that are there. What we're trying to get going for 2018, and hopefully through awarding of a community grant and other sponsorships, we ran, the night of the festival, we ran a late night jam session at Wendell Clark's that was supposed to shut down at 1, and it shut down at 2:30 because it was so successful. So Wendell's wants to get back into that vein, so we're hoping that will be like a Thursday night thing. We've been speaking with Brendan Healy and Danny Harvey at Studio 2 so far about doing monthly concerts where we could put groups that will contribute to what we want to do at the festival. We'd like to launch 2 community jazz orchestras, one for middle school and one for high school groups, 2 17-piece bands that would rehearse weekly and then play at the festival and other municipal events. Chinguacousy Branch Library, we've been working with Julie Mandel. There's a recording studio now at Chinguacousy, and it's being underused, and she'd like us to activate that somehow. So we're going to be doing monthly clinics and education series at Chinguacousy. And finally, we'd love to have an incubator somewhere in our office where we could have musicians come and collaborate on different projects, songwriting, recording, production, and make that available free to the public based on the space that we have. So that's our 2018, and the 2-day jazz festival.
Extremely ambitious and extensive.
Yeah. Thank you.
Incredible. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, and
Thank you,
I'll wait for any referrals.
Okay, thank you for holding the referral, Councillor Medeiros. Councillor Miles.
So this is the kind of discussion I'd hope we'd be able to have with the Brampton Music Theatre, and unfortunately council didn't allow it. But I think based on your remarks, Carmen, nobody wants to move the referral. And I do think that you need to understand that those community groups, those arts groups in our community that are getting space, they earned it. The Brampton Music Theatre is a very successful music theatre. 55 years of community performances in the city of Brampton that are generating well over $500,000 to our theatre. So for you to come and say that they're failing and that they haven't provided the kind of vitality to the community. There's lots of room for the arts community in the city of Brampton, but the way to be successful is to work together. And, I don't think that your group endeared themselves today to some of the very successful groups that we have in our community. So you might want to think about that when you look towards an arts and culture plan for the city of Brampton. I think that your program is amazing. I think it's amazing, and I hope that you continue to be successful in the city. We have always supported the arts in the city of Brampton, but we've continued to grow at such a pace here in the city of Brampton, and we're doing the right thing. We're taking a look at this, and yes, we want equity for all, but not on the backs of those who have earned the right to have what they have based on past performance. So I hope you think about that, because we've got lots of room in the city of Brampton for successful festivals. That's what we want. That's how we're going to turn this around. But please, work with other groups. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move a referral of this back to staff.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, for public record,
No,
we don't. Thanks, Carmen. We don't want to get into a debate here about it. So, Councillor Sprovieri, we have a referral on the floor, so speaking to the referral.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I have no problem with the referral for a report based on the request that Carmen is making. But I'd like to say Carmen was very impressed. So I'd like to apologize for not getting around to meeting with you, but we really enjoyed your presentation. I think you have a great vision, and you have so much energy, and you're a young guy, and I think you can go a long ways to make your vision come true. And I think you have a great vision, and I'm certainly, and I think what you're looking for here is from what I'm gathering, is that you like to be treated fairly and you like to be get a kickstart so you can achieve the goal that you're trying to achieve, and but you need some help. And I'm certainly open to that request, and I believe it based on your performance that you've already started. I think that you merit that chance, and so we'll wait for the report from staff, and hopefully we can work something out that get you going and do a great future for the Brampton here. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr.
Thank you, Councillor Sprovier. So we have a motion of referral on the floor. Councillor Miles, seconded by Councillor Medeiros. All in favor? That carries. And can we have a motion to receive the delegation? Councillor Fortini, all in favor? That carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carmen.
Thank you.
And Joe, thank you. Okay, so we will move now. Quickly, we had a request to bring forward staff presentation 8.1.1 at this time. So we will have the presentation from Victoria Mountain, Manager of Culture Economic Development, and I believe Kelly is joining?
I am joining, yes.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, members of council, CRT, members of the public, our arts organizations here today. Thank you for the opportunity to bring the presentation up and to speak to it today, Councillor Miles. So, Victoria and I are here today on behalf of the Cultural Services Division and the Steering Committee for the Culture Master Plan to bring you an update on where we are in the process for a 10-year vision for culture in Brampton. As you recall, this work on the project began in October 2017 with the retention of industry-leading consultants, Lord's Cultural Resources and Nordicity, to expertly lead the process. The consulting team has worked in hand with our steering committee of community leaders to complete phase 1 of the project, which focused on research and analysis of Brampton's current cultural environment. With council's support, we've been able to expedite this important project, and we are pleased to be here today with an update on our progress and launch of the second phase of our work. The development of the Culture Master Plan was identified as a priority for the City of Brampton in the 2016 to 2018 Strategic Plan. Other key initiatives that are part of moving our city forward include the Planning Vision, the Economic Development Master Plan, a new tourism strategy, and a strengthened artistic direction for performing arts in the city. Together, these important projects are supporting the development of cultural vibrancy and community attachment, building a Brampton that is a hub for investment and innovation. A key part of the setting strategic direction for culture in Brampton is the establishment of a community-driven vision. Through their work with the consulting team, our steering committee of community leaders and innovators has put forth a strong and inclusive vision statement for culture in Brampton that is based on the following principles. Culture is led by the creative community. Culture is everywhere in Brampton. Brampton is a place where there is freedom to experiment. And culture stimulates creativity and innovation and increases the city appeal to new residents, entrepreneurs, and businesses.
So the outcome of Phase 1, Research and Analysis, is the State of Culture Report, which was distributed to Council earlier this week and is publicly available on the City's website. This report is based on a thorough review of existing plans and policies, research into trends and best practices, benchmarking with regional comparators, including Mississauga, Markham, Hamilton, Vaughan, and Surrey, BC, and a series of workshops and in-person interviews with key stakeholders. The report is based, findings of the report, indicate that there is a great deal of less visible and informal expressions of culture that are happening in Brampton, and that these should be brought to the fore. Additionally, Brampton's youthfulness, diversity, and entrepreneurial energy creates opportunity for this city to lead in terms of cross-cultural fusion and new forms of artistic expression, which could effectively position Brampton as an emerging cultural tourism destination. The report also identifies space for creatives to work and gather as key to building a creative cultural community. This critical research provides a focus and the foundation for the next phase of this project, which is centered around public engagement and consultation. So tomorrow, February 1st, we're launching the public engagement process for the Culture Master Plan. This process builds on input received through planning vision consultation and delves deeper into arts and culture topics and issues in Brampton. Public engagement in this project is critical to ensure the plan is community-driven and continues to build trust and confidence amongst our residents. We will be facilitating more than 70 engagements over the next 60 days all across the city, seeking public inspiration and input through stakeholder workshops, pop-up consultations, and surveys. It is our objective to capture a deep and thorough understanding of attitudes towards arts, culture, and heritage activities in our city, perceptions about the role of culture in civic life, levels of public participation as audience members, supporters, volunteers, and creators, and expectations and the levels of satisfaction with current cultural offerings and access to cultural activities in Brampton. We'll be speaking directly with artists, creative entrepreneurs, businesses, arts organizations, patrons, volunteers, supporters of the arts, and our youth and educators in our community. We are committed to meaningful dialogue, and our consulting team and our city staff will be on the ground across Brampton, popping up in various neighborhoods and events to speak to residents in the context of their own communities and everyday lives. Engagement will be supported by a robust communication strategy, and staff is working closely with our consulting team to ensure broad participation. We'll be following up with council to keep you apprised of activities in your wards and share with you the tools to support people getting involved. So in terms of next steps, following completion of public engagement, we will update you on the results and move into the third and final phase of this project, which is creating the draft and final cultural master plan. Staff, the consulting team, and the steering committee are deeply committed to the success of this project and its timely delivery in June 2018. The Culture Master Plan is an essential opportunity to take a fresh look at how we invest in arts and culture and continue to build a strong and dynamic sector here in Brampton. Thank you so much for your time, and we would be happy to receive any questions or comments you may have.
Thank you very much, Victoria. We have people on the board. Councillor Medeiros.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for the presentation. And I guess it's not a direct question regarding, I guess, the report or the process. I think a little bit of what we saw today with all the different groups that came speaks to a little bit of that sort of vacuum, that anxiety that we left when we made the decision at the beginning of term of council. And I appreciate all the steps that you're working through, and so this is not a reflection. It's just the timing of it has been a little bit concerning to me, and it's not a reflection so much on staff. I understand it was our direction, but when you look back at the decision we made and the vacuum that we maintained, since I've been on council, the lack of support arts communities have received, arts groups have received because of this. It's interesting because you see these groups in front of you, and you put people and you put groups to sort of our decision, and you start understanding the dynamics more of arts and culture here in the city, and you realize that there are a lot of groups with a lot of uncertainty about their future. And that where I think is kind of the frustration, which is a little bit different than our other master rec plans. When it comes to the arts, so we dealt with Beaux-Arts, we had Brampton Music Theatre, you heard new organizations. And I'm just wondering, and again, I don't know if this relates it, and probably procedurally someone's going to tell me you can't do this, and I want no one to scream, but when we have an arts capacity building fund, for example, is there not a way that we can maybe beef it up as a sort of measure to allow us to sort of meet some of the needs of these arts groups as a short-term sort of Band-Aid solution while we develop this longer? Because by the time this rolls out, by the time we have a change of council, all this other stuff, I'm just thinking that, there needs to be that injection. I don't know, like I throw a figure like $500,000. I know there was delegations before that talked about us not really supporting arts in comparison to other municipalities, that there was not enough money invested, and I know some councillors feel that in certain ways we've supported them. But I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity for us. And I don't know if I can move it as a motion for staff, and if this is appropriate, if you're going to tell me wait till next week, I don't know, but move a motion to look at, adding more funding to the Arts Capacity Building Fund that would allow groups to access this in the short term over the next year or so. I'll wait. If you have any comments, Mr. Dar.
So through the chair, The challenge, you're absolutely correct. The challenge that we've had, and we fast-tracked this cultural master plan since we've taken over this connection of the economic development culture, because we knew this. But there is this challenge between June of this year and understanding some of our delegations' goals and aspirations. So we feel this every day. We hear it every day. But I'll leave it to councils for their direction. But it is a valid comment.
And I guess with that, I'll wait for Councillor Miles to speak, but in the meantime, and again, it's not a reflection on staff. I want to be very clear, because I think the master plan is an excellent plan, and I think where it's going, and I look forward to all but it's almost like we left a lot of organizations kind of, in the dark, organizations that built this dependency, or you can talk about, or been struggling with in our community, and we just sort of made that decision back then. And it's one of those decisions that it was early in my council that I'm not sure if I would have made the same decision, or I would have maybe made it differently. So anyways, thank you. Did you want
Mr. Sale?
Yeah.
Through you, Chair, if I may, I think you've triggered something that perhaps I need to look at with the team as a sort of an inventory of what's going on and what might impact people. If you just throw money at it today, there's never enough money. And then we're going to have this inequity and this imbalance. So if you would allow us to go back and just kind of look at, what impacts it might have on certain organizations over the next year versus just throwing more money at it now, because there's never enough, and then, you'll have more groups here that, why didn't I get it? And I'm just a little nervous about that. If you would consider us to do a little bit of one deeper dig and come back to you.
And I'm open to that. The only thing I would ask is that if there is an opportunity to put like a pot based on our current parameters and criteria in that building fund, that we can sort of beef it up financially to allow these organizations to access it if they meet the criteria established. It's not just throwing money, but allowing more in the pot to be shared more so organizations can build that capacity. But I will allow you that time to do it.
And then even come back with that recommendation of how best to do that. So
Yeah.
we're not challenged again on why them, why not us. Yeah.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Medeiros. Councillor Miles.
It's never easy balancing the finances and the demand. Because we never have enough on the finance side, and we certainly always have enough demand. I just wanted to start off by recognizing both of you, Kelly and Victoria. I think you've done an amazing job at this, and if there is a reason that this has been so slow, it's not because of your leadership. It's probably because of not enough leadership, perhaps, from this table. In regards to Councillor Medeiros' comments, we're probably going to have a good idea of what the demand is when we look at our community grant funding. So that's really key. But the community engagement piece, I am so happy to hear about that, because I know groups like those that have come before us today, they want to make sure that they have a say, and that, they're our artists. And at the end of the day, we make the decisions, but they're our artists. They're the heart and the soul of arts and culture in the city, and we really do need to hear what it is they're saying and how, and then it's up to us to kind of find the right balance of the kind of support we can give. And equity is important. We all recognize that we need to do a good job of making sure that everybody has fair opportunity to be successful, but council has to find the answers to, how much municipal support should we give, and how much should groups need to go out and find. So, but it's never easy. But I think that the process that you've embarked on is a really positive one. We're doing our research. We've got direction. We know that there's a point at the end of the day. I'm so glad that by June we're going to have a final report, because the changes, as Councillor Medeiros indicated at the beginning of this term, it left our arts community really in the dark. And it has been difficult and full of uncertainty for them without having a strong network. So can you let us know your schedule of community engagement, how it's going to be promoted, so the different groups? I know when we were doing like Future Ready in the planning process, our staff would go out to specific groups and organizations. So maybe you would set up a time to meet with Brampton Music Theatre to hear a lot of the issues that they have and the barriers to greater success in the community as well as some of this, because there's years and years of knowledge. And it's unfortunate Moira Lumley was here and she left, but she's got to be the longest standing member of Brampton Music Theatre. Moira's in her 80s. She's still very vocal. I hear from her on everything that happens in Brampton, not just the BMT, but years of commitment, and those are the people who know what they need to be successful and what they can do on their own. And that's what we want our master plan to reflect. But thank you. I haven't read this. I haven't read this. My daughter had a baby on last Thursday night, so my attention has been elsewhere, but I will take the time to read it, and I recognize that arts and culture is are the heart of this city. There's so many groups, organizations, people doing amazing work, and we need to find the way as a city to make them feel like we respect them, we care about them, and we want them to be here and be successful. So I really hope that's what this plan does at the end of the day. Okay? Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Councillor Sprovieri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, ladies, for the presentation. I just, since we're on the topic, I was wondering whether we can perhaps invite Alicia Cara to come here and from Brampton, a young lady that has done Brampton a tremendous honor, being the first Canadian ever to win a Grammy. I think we should bring her here and honor her for her achievement. So perhaps maybe you can reach out to her at a council meeting and we can do that and recognize her for her achievement.
So you're absolutely correct. Through the chair, we have been actively for the last year and a half, maybe 2 years, reaching out to her. She's a very busy woman, very successful young lady, and as you recall on the red carpet, just the other night she mentioned the word how proud she is about Brampton. So you're absolutely right. So we are continuing to reach out. It's just we just got to hopefully somehow close this deal. So, but we are very, 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 very proud of her in the city.
Great, thank you. And I hope that we have many more of these success stories throughout our effort and our master plan and what we can do for the arts here in Brampton. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Sprovieri. Mr. CEO?
Yes, I just wanted to close by saying that, we've heard a lot of discussion, and I want to say how proud I am of council. You've invested quite a bit in your term, almost 12 million on your operating expense in your term and 6 million in capital. So it's not that you haven't invested in culture. I think what I'm really excited about with the cultural master plan is how it talks. We got to get a lot more creative with the private sector. We need some private sector investment. And just listening around, we're still kind of stuck that you got to fund everything. And I'm really hoping you're open to some of the creative ideas in the cultural master plan that other cities have done that brings in private sector investment for culture. They really see it as a critical component of development, not so much on DCs, but other creative ways. And we probably have not done enough. Well, we have not done enough in that area in the past. So hopefully you're open to that because you see a lot more vibrancy in culture when the private sector is totally engaged.
Thank you. Councillor Sprovieri, are you still on? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Good report. Now, I believe there is a full schedule in our report. If you could maybe put that up or send it to everybody online, and as well as the direct link to the online version so that we can all distribute it through Facebook and Twitter.
Yes, through the chair. We have a full strategy to let you know when the pop-ups will be within your wards, as well as the full communications engagement across the city. We'll be providing you with, tweets and information and photos and links to surveys and everything. So you'll have a full suite of communications tools to use to help encourage the participation, as well as there'll be workshops dedicated to specific sectors within the community. We're deeply committed to community engagement during this process and having a community-led plan at the end of the day. So Victoria and I we take this very seriously.
Thank you very much.
This will be the fun.
Can I have a motion to receive the presentation? Councillor Willens, all in favor? Thank you very much. And at this point, I will turn the chair back to Councillor Willens, but I would just like to say very quickly, just a reminder, today is Bell Let's Talk Day, so if you want to tweet and or send messages and support mental health, I encourage you all to do that. So thank you. Councillor Willens.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bowman. We'll just wait till these guys get settled in here and we'll move on to the Public Works. Okay, we can carry on for the Public Works, and Joe, you'll be happy to know the snow has stopped outside, so that must relieve you a bit there. So we have no staff presentations. We do have 3 reports. The first report is from Indy Hand, Senior Project Engineer, Public Works Engineering, dated December 18th, 2017, to begin procurement and budget amendment for the road resurfacing. You moving it? Okay. Everybody's good? Everybody okay with that? Hold on, Councillor Fortini wants to talk about the roads.
I don't know if it could be in question period. Joe, on the resurfacing, just a quick question. We have a certain schedule when certain roads are done, because a lot of people like to do their driveways, maybe, I don't know. Is there, or we don't have a schedule?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there is no set schedule at this point. We still have to go out, tender, get a contractor, and get them in place. Once we have that contractor in place, then we'll start. We'll know where they want to start, and we usually don't prescribe where they start and where they finish. But as the program goes through, this happens every year. Things happen. There's weddings on the street. There's people want driveways done, landscaping works, and we try and take those into account. So people know that there's some special event that's taking place on their street or in their driveway or in their home. We try and accommodate as best we can.
And one more question. Do they have notices that they're going to have, the road's going to be redone on those areas before they start any construction on their driveways, or and they don't get their driveways cut?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we give out a notice. We hand deliver to each and every homeowner.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fortini. The next report is, all in favor of that? That carries. Thank you. The next report is 6.2.2 is from the Traffic Operations Technologist of Public Works, traffic calming from Richfield North to Richfield South, and also Countryside to Peter Robertson on Mountain Ash. Councillor Paleshi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to move the report. Just one of the comments, I had told Joe and Mr. Parks that I was going to go out and look at in front of Lagerquest, and I did yesterday. And I just wanted to let you know, in between the 2 addresses, there is no parking signs. So cars are permitted to park in that area, in that section. So 6.2.2-10. Lagerquest is on the right-hand side. The entrance and exit, north and south. There is an area pretty much where the yellow is that you are allowed to park, so I was just worried about the potential for cars parking there and then us taking a little bit of space and not having, because there's a lot of bus traffic and so there's a lot of school traffic there with Sacred Heart, Lagerquest, and Terry Fox. So I just wanted to let you guys know that and just to have a look. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Paleshi. Councillor Spilready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question on the traffic calming that we've been doing for the last several years. Have we received any feedback from the communities, the people who live on the streets that have been given these treatments whether there's been a great improvement, less complaints. How's the program working this? I remember Rutherford Road was one of the first ones. I believe it was painted with line restrictions and so on. I drive that once in a while, and it seems that it certainly kind of restricts the cars from speeding. So have we had any feedback from anyone on the success of this technique?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we haven't had any what we call formal feedback where we've gone back to the community and said, well, now that it's been in place for a year or 2 years, what do you think? We haven't done that. But we have noticed, though, that because we do go by and still do speed studies, and we take a look at how traffic functions, and from our observations, in most cases, these measures do work. I mean, a narrower road does slow down traffic. We try not to use too many what we call really hard traffic calming measures, such as speed bumps and humps. We try and do it with paint, narrowing roads, curb bump outs, that kind of thing, but not necessarily putting an impediment on the street. In general, our staff observations are that they're successful. If you're asking me whether we went back to the actual community to ask, we haven't done that.
Okay. And perhaps maybe that's something to think about. I know Fern Forest was done a couple of years ago. There used to be a lot of complaints coming from that area where there's a couple of schools, several schools in that stretch. And I think it would be a good exercise to send a survey, letter to the residents, say, are you happy with the results, and get your feedback. So that would be, I think, a good piece of information for us here. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Brady. Councilor Palashi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think there needs to be a little bit further discussion on that, and actually I don't even want to have that discussion, but before we actually go back to the residents, I like what we're currently doing. We're actually getting the facts. I tell you, every time I look out of the front of my house, I see a car going by, and I think they're speeding. So, that leads me to believe that there's constant speeding on my street. So if a survey ever came by, I would have to say, well, everybody speeds on my street. So I don't know if that would come back. I don't, but it's regardless of. I think that the survey, you look at the survey that we did for this and the poor response that we did receive for both areas. I'm just not sure that going about and doing something else like that, although it may be a minor cost, I think I like the fact that we're actually going back and getting facts and the factual data rather than going out and getting another survey that probably comes back poor. I'm open to, I guess, talking about it in the future or maybe other ways of doing it, but I'm just not sure right now. I like the facts that we get, in fact. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Palashi. Seeing no other speakers, Councilor Dillon. Councilor Dillon, I think, had his hand up first at one of them. Okay. Councilor Palashi, move it. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. The next report is 6.2.3. It's just a general traffic bylaw 993-93 administrative update. Any questions on that from any members of council? Councilor Gibson moves that report. All in favor? Thank you. That's carried. The correspondence, the other two items are put in. There's no new business. Council question period. You have a question?
Peter, is that appropriate for this, for what we were speaking about? There was a committee of adjustment decision made?
No, it's not, and Councillor Sprovieri raised the issue this morning, and I advised the committee.
Okay, gotcha.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Joe, for your crews. We've been getting nothing but good reports so far about the last little storm we had, and streets are they're a lot cleared up, so thank you. Okay, Councillor Palashi, we move to community services. There's one, did you want to take it over and do it before lunch?
Thank you, members of council. We are at the committee, the corporate services, community services section of the agenda. We have one report, request to begin procurement purchasing bylaw section 4.0, supply and delivery of one aerial device for the city of Brampton. Are there any questions on this? Seeing none, Councillor Bowman will move this report. All in favor? Carries. Over to Councillor Bowman. Are we breaking now? Oh, is there any questions? Seeing none. Are we breaking now?
You're the chair, do you want to?
Well, it's almost lunch. How many reports you got left? You got Kelly Stahl's report?
We have 2 reports only.
2 reports. Should be okay? Just finish 2? Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Very good. We will continue on with economic development and culture. We've already taken care of 8.1, staff presentation. We move on to 8.2, which was a report on the event road closures for Rogers Hometown Hockey. Was there any questions? Seeing none, would someone like to, Councillor Dillon would like to move that report. All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. Report 8.2.2 was the year-round farmers market feasibility study, final report, and we have Councillor Gibson on the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to be quick. A good report. I just had a couple of questions or maybe concerns. When I see the bullets on 8.2.2-3, one question is, what does must reflect Brampton mean? The second bullet down on 8.2.2-3 must reflect Brampton.
So through the chair, that was, that came from the recommendations from the report. So I would just suggest that I would assume it must reflect our cultural community.
Okay, good, that's good. Also, I see must appeal to younger audience. I'm going to assume it means all ages, not just, we're adding younger in there because maybe we kind of neglect those over the years. Is that a true statement that we're trying to reflect all the ages? Because, if it's going to be in the downtown, the majority of people who live around the downtown are probably have hair like me. But
Yes, through the chair. The intent with the Indoor Farmers Market report was to look at all opportunities for what could make up the farmers market, and I think the consultants note there about appealing to a younger demographic, or at least acknowledging that the city is a young demographic, that when we build an indoor year-round market, we want to take into consideration sort of what those trends are for that age. So it is there for consideration, knowing that we attract a specific audience currently to our downtown market, and so it's just acknowledging that there's a broader audience to consider.
Okay, good. I just didn't want some senior calling me and saying it.
Absolutely, the intention is not.
I'm a senior. I mean, I was offended a bit. No, I wasn't. I'm kidding. Just one more thing. I like the first bullet with multiple components. I gave Mr. Darling some pictures of a market that I took when I was in New York, and it had everything in there. And that's what made it a success, including a small restaurant with lunch and dinner type of things. It was fantastic. We got to think about all the things that people want, the cheeses, the wines, everything in a market, not just fruits and things like that. So, and I know Bob shared with me some of the pictures. He had some other ones too. So this is great. I think, this is long overdue, and thank you very much for working hard on it. Let's hope we get it opened. And Councillor Miles and I have been pushing this for a lot of years now, saying, let's get something going. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to see this report here and the recommendation. I do think that it's going to, should it be in the heart of the downtown, it's going to really be amazing to add, so much more vitality than where we are today. And we're really moving forward. I think that our downtown is getting better and better all the time. This just does bring me back to the idea that we've talked about so many times in regards to the opportunities that are provided by the Carnegie Library, the old fire hall, and the barracks of the Lawrence Scots. And I think the reason why I keep going there is it just reminds me of markets everywhere. If you go to Boston, you go to Vancouver, you go to different places that have amazing markets, they usually start in those old historical buildings and then they grow. So we will look there, right, to begin? Good.
So through the chair, I have a meeting next week with the federal government to rekindle that conversation again. And our CAO and I have some conversations. Maybe we have to look at going to Ottawa and having further conversations. So actively, and we understand that building is such a great opportunity for us.
Okay.
So,
Anything I can do to help, please ask. Thank you. And thank you to staff and the committee for really doing an amazing job. I appreciate it.
And you will move the report, Councillor Miles? We have the motion to receive the report. All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. We have no other new business. We did have a piece of correspondence from the BIA. Councillor Dillon, did you have a question about the correspondence or question period? For question period? Okay, so we can accept the correspondence? Okay, and we'll move on to Councillor question period. Councillor Dillon.
I just wanted to know, Bob, if it was possible, because we're beginning, in terms of engagement for the master plan, I know it begins tomorrow. If you can provide us as councillors any way or opportunity that we could also help promote the engagement, and I know that particularly myself, whether it's different communities, whether it's Ward 9, 10 or anything else, I'd certainly, love to brainstorm on how I can help you guys out. So I guess that's just food for thought for everybody around on what we can do personally. But I'd love for you to help us out a little and let us help you, market it a little bit.
So through the chair, Councillor, we really do appreciate your support in getting into our different media outlets. So I'll have Victoria and Kelly reach out to all of council and provide you the information, and that would be just outstanding to get this message across the city. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further questions, we will pass it over to corporate services.
That's me. So I think everything has been dealt with already other than question period. Any questions on corporate services? No questions? Back to you.
Madam Chair, so
Did I miss
if
something?
you wish to finish the agenda, it's up to you, or if you wish to have
okay.
Councillor Willens finish it.
So then it's question period. Is there any questions from members of the audience on any item that was on the agenda today? If you'd like to come down. Welcome. You have a question?
Yes, how would I use the speaker? Okay, so my question is for the traffic calming. It's a lot of streets have been looked at. I was wondering about arterial routes, if people who travel down Steeles will notice that later at night, because of how wide it is, the speed limits and how far apart the stops or the traffic signals are, people will basically use it as a drag strip. And I was wondering if there were investigations for traffic calming on arterials. It's been a danger. I've personally nearly been run over on multiple occasions on this when I had the signal and people just blew right through that. And I was wondering if they would investigate bus lanes, which would narrow it, but because of the stoplights, while it would reduce the speeds because of how much time people spend at the stoplights, would not lower effective speed that much. It would also help with bus traffic because Steeles is, as council knows, a very large and important bus route. And also, frequently, emergency vehicles are stopped there because traffic is congested and bus lanes would allow them to travel through and go around traffic. So they're not stuck at stoplights for substantial amounts of time.
I recognize you from the Board of Trade event.
Yes.
And you had some really very, very good ideas about planning and urban design and et cetera. So welcome to council. It's good to see you here. I know Mr. Petushka could respond to you, but you've got a lot of items there, and I'm sure our transportation staff at any time would be willing to as our director of transit would be willing to have the conversation with you, but we'll see what we can do today in responding. And thank you for being engaged. Sheridan College student, right?
Yes.
Okay, stay there because Mr. Petushka's going to speak to you.
Well, through you, Madam Chair. Steeles Avenue is if you look at it at 9 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock at night, it's probably not wide enough and not long enough and not fast enough. You start looking at it after after peak periods. It's all of those things, and I agree with the presenter here that it does become a drag strip. Historically, we have been focusing on traffic calming more on our community streets, on more residentially. Well, the focus is on residential areas, and so we've been focusing on collector streets and so on. And just to let you know that we've got well over 100 streets that we've been asked to look at over the years. Just the resources that it takes. I mean, we take a look at the ones that were in the report today. I mean, that took literally months of meetings with the community, with the various stakeholders, with the school boards, and so on, until we actually came up with a plan. So it's very difficult even to get a couple of streets into the program and actually do something with them every year. But Steeles Avenue, and the CAO is going to kill me on this, but it is a regional road, so I gotta have to step back because it's not under City of Brampton jurisdiction. But the CAO actually went to the Board of Trade luncheon about a year ago and said, hey, look, we got a bus stop here and we got 80 kilometers over here. We don't have a sidewalk, and what are you going to do about it, Patushka? So we understand that there is an issue. We also understand that it's a developing road, especially on the very western edge. It hasn't been fully completed yet, but it's the nature of the beast too. At night, let's face it, when you start listening to the news in the morning on 680 and you hear all these car crashes, well, they're on the 400 series highways, they're on QEW. It's when the traffic isn't there, and then you get rogue people that actually are abusing the road system, and that's when accidents happen, when they're going way faster than they should be going. So it's an ongoing problem. We are working with the Region Appeal. We're working towards the Region Appeal have bought into, and we're partners with this Vision Zero, that there are no deaths on any street within the Region Appeal. It's going to take a long time to get that resolved, but it will happen one day. So.
Okay. Thank you for recognizing the issue.
Yes. Councillor Pellecci did want to speak to you.
Oh, sure.
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming. Regional Council just received notification, I think it was earlier this week, that there are sections of Steeles that are currently 80 that are moving to 70, and sections of Steeles that are currently 70 moving to 60. They'll continue to look at Steeles. I know that in particular in the West End, we're doing there's a whole EA process going on right now at Steeles and Mississauga Road, and with the future of Zoom and the bus lanes and everything like that. So I just want to let you know, they're currently looking at it, and they continue to look at it. And I'm not sure when the action taken on the reduction of speed limits is going to take place, but it is coming to Regional Council on March the 8th of this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you for joining us today.
Madam Chair, if just the speaker can give his name for the record, please.
Oh, could you provide your name, please?
My name is Sylvia Roberts. I live near Steeles and Kennedy. That's the intersection I was talking about.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Bowman. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you.